It all started a few years ago when I was at a friend's house. For legal reasons, I'll call him Melvin. We had both dabbed with different drugs for a few years, and we thought that we knew our limits as far as certain substances were concerned. We had also had some interest in Datura because a friend of ours had recently eaten some seeds and tripped off of them. He didn't really give us details, but had said that they were extremely powerful. With that in mind, we went off to harvest some seed pods and eat the seeds. The plants were growing in the front yard of somebody's house. They were about 4 feet tall and had some fruits that were covered in sharp spikes. Melvin said that we'd better pick them fast so that the people whose yard we were on wouldn't bitch. We each picked about 5 seed pods and went to his house, where we opened them up, took the seeds out, and proceeded to eat some. I remember the seeds tasted extremely bitter, almost too bitter to keep down, but we managed. After we took all the seeds, about 150, we both kind of sat around for 30 minutes anticipating the trip. At the end of those 30 minutes, I began to feel very hot and everything had a hazy quality to it. I also noticed that my mouth felt drier than it ever had before. Think of running a marathon in the Sahara Desert with no water while smoking an enormous blunt, and you will realize just how unpleasant Datura Cottonmouth really is. Melvin got up to get some water for us, and then I looked at my hands for some reason. There appeared to be smoke or steam coming off of them, and I started to notice that the walls were melting. Not breathing or shifting around like on shrooms or acid, but actually melting like butter on a frying pan. At this point, I became very frightened with the idea that maybe the entire world will melt into a cosmic puddle, with me and everyone I know in it melting as well. Melvin finally came back with the water and told me to go to the next room and look at your eyes. They're fucking huge. I remembered that my pupils were so dilated that my whole eye appeared black, and I thought that I must be some alien, and then walked back to Melvin with the newfound realization that I was an alien. I don't remember too much after that, but apparently we both walked around town in a completely dazed and psychotic state all day, talking to imaginary people and believing we had the ability to teleport from place to place. Some of our friends had run into us and, realizing how fucked up we were, became our babysitters for the day and told us parts of the trip that we couldn't remember. After several hours of this, Melvin wandered off to the local park and some of my friends/babysitters began going home. One of them asked how I was feeling, and my response was something like, "Only if the water is 1 billion years old." At some point, somebody called my mom and told her to come pick me up because I was really fucked up. She came and picked me up and then drove me to the hospital after seeing exactly how fucked up I was. It turns out that she thought I had taken some kind of terminal, Syd Barrett-style acid trip or had suddenly gone completely insane. I was wearing no shirt or shoes, my brand new glasses were missing, and I was ranting and raving about things that weren't there. I ended up in the emergency room where I had to be restrained by police, orderlies, etc. because I kept trying to escape. The doctor stuck all kinds of needles in my arms and hands and I kept trying to take them out. I remember looking at my left hand and then looking at my mom saying, "Look, the Japanese blood islands." After that, I don't remember too much about the hospital, except the day after when I was tripping extremely hard and came to the realization that I was being held against my will and being sexually tortured with a catheter and started shrieking uncontrollably for what felt like forever. Apparently Datura makes you unable to urinate, so the doctors put a catheter in my penis. You have no idea what pain or fear is until you try to pull a catheter out while tripping on Datura. I want to make that clear. I was discharged about 4 days later, but I had to go to rehab after that because I was still a minor and had OD'd. For the next year or so, I struggled to come to terms with what happened to my mind that day, and became very strange and reclusive without the desire to go to school or get a job or do anything, really. I finally got a job not too long ago, and it has helped out my mental state a bit. In closing, I urge anyone who wants to try Datura not to try it. How not to do Datura. What you are about to read is a shining example that Datura is indeed not a drug to be taken lightly, or in my opinion, used, period. I had been dating a wonderful woman with an amazing family for just over a month. I was completely down on my luck when we met, and to this day, I still don't know why she took a chance on me. I noticed a Datura plant growing in her grandma's front yard. Being curious, I picked a seed pod and held onto it for a few days. I had read about this substance for years and wanted to try it, but have never found it growing wild and refused to purchase anything I intend to ingest from the internet. I have an extensive drug history. I do not feel the need to qualify myself farther. The first time I tried eating the seeds, I had 5 as a test run. Nothing happened. The next time, 15. Again, nothing. I was beginning to wonder. But of course, third time's a charm, or in my case, a curse. I consumed 40 seeds one morning approximately 11 a.m. I was in good spirits and had no major worries pending that needed immediate attention that day. I did not have a sitter, never have, never really needed one. Began doing things to pass the time, watched some TV, played Xbox, and checked Facebook. An hour or so in, I began to feel different, mildly fuzzy, I guess, but in previous experiences this has never happened, so I thought it best to go get in bed and cover up and see what happened. That is my last real memory. I am told I went completely insane. I ingested copious amounts of her grandma's medication, including but not limited to gabapentin, lorazepam, tramadol, and her grandson's Ritalin. Not some of it, all of it, roughly 200 milligrams. I tried vacuuming mattresses, and I went to the bathroom, pissed all over the floors, all in front of this poor woman and her grandchildren. My girlfriend and her mother were called along with an ambulance and the police. Thank God that they handled the police, because I'm only on parole. I went to the hospital via ambulance and was admitted to the psych ward. I finally came to senses around 48 hours later. I still have somehow salvaged the relationship with the girlfriend, but I am mortified by my actions. I had been struggling on and off with sobriety, but this drug may have finally given me the kick in the ass I needed to stop. I don't know if anyone will read and take note of anything I have said, but I am going on record as saying this is the most overwhelming, powerful drug I have ever done. And I have completed treatment for IV heroin use, just for example's sake. I honestly don't know how I remember any of this experience other than what people told me of what happened. It started one beautiful morning. I had been planning for this day all summer. I had slowly accumulated 1 gram of opium, 2.5 grams of mushrooms, and a decent bag of good pot. I knew this day would dwarf all other experiences times a million. I called my friend P to come over and be my sitter. I knew no matter how used to any individual drug I was, this would make me need a sitter. Before P came over, I took my blender and put about 300 Morning Glory seeds, 20 Datura seeds, 2 dried peyote, my 2.5 grams of mushrooms, and added ice-cold vodka for good measure. I blended it on puree for a few minutes and it turned a dark brown color. Bam! The cover blew off. Very disappointed, I cleaned up the beautifully drugged up mess and chilled what remained. When P finally came over, we had decided to start my day off with a few bowls of reefer. Feeling pretty stoned, I decided to let P finish the bowl, and I filled the bowl with an opium weed mix. Feeling rather pleasant, I decided that it was time to start my trip. Knowing that this concoction was going to taste worse than shit, I added almost a whole box of sugar to it. I slowly sipped from the blender for about 30 minutes. The second I had my first sip, I started to feel what I thought was the alky. After I finished the mix, I knew it hit me very fast, and before I was totally destroyed, I decided to smoke a leaf or two of some dried salvia. After my first hit, I blacked out. P said that I kept shaking and muttering some really weird song. When I came up, I remember seeing infinitely tall vines growing all around me with little bug-like things flying over my head. I had never tripped so hard ever in my life. My brain felt like it was going to fall out of my skull. Seconds later, I remembered I had a stomach full of miscellaneous drugs and vomited violently 2 or 3 times. Words in this language of ours can't fully explain how I felt at this point. It was like I was in a whole other realm of thought and perception. I had forgotten P was still with me. I couldn't see anything through these ever-growing vines, but I was somewhat sure I was still on my back porch. My thought patterns were ever-growing, and every thought had a million other tangents attached to them, and so on. I blacked out for a while longer, and the next thing I remember is being in the center of a circle containing all realms of existence, and everything and everyone that encompasses them. But I wasn't a living being in this realm. I was a mesh-like thing connected to all that could possibly be imagined by anyone or anything. Unfortunately, that's all I remember. When I finally started to come down, I thought I was in some sort of new reality that only I was in. Then, I saw P, and he started to calm me down. He said I had been staring into space all night, shaking from time to time. By the time I totally sobered up, it was the next morning. For the next few days, I wasn't sure about anything or anyone I ever knew, but I slowly realized that I just took a ton of drugs and tripped really hard. I still wonder sometimes if I always was in this existence, but the fact that I'm here now tells me to cope with where I am. I do not recommend this to anyone who isn't ready for a total life overhaul. To best describe this trip, I'm going to use half of what I remember and half of what my friends told me what happened. I recall the warm March day very well. It was during my spring break senior year in high school. We had set out to trade the Datura leaves with the rainbow people in Buck Lake. Usually around this time of year, I am able to bring the pots, pans, perishable food, milk, eggs, etc., and they would trade me with either some of the finest marijuana or LSD. Seeing as how there was an extreme shortage of LSD, we set out with the goal of trading the Datura and some food for LSD. We arrive and nobody has anything. So we have all of this Datura and camping supplies, and we are in the middle of the forest, so naturally, we camp. We drink a few beers and fired up a blunt. Then my friend tells me that we should take the Datura and some Dramamine and trip all night. I thought, what the heck? So instead of picking the white flowers, he picked the green leaves. He said it would work, and I believed him. So, I took about 10 Dramamine and 3 green leaves about the size of my hand. What happens next is probably the hardest thing ever to recall. I have used LSD, mushrooms, and other drugs, but nothing, I mean nothing, could compare to the sheer power of the trip I was about to experience. The trip began with no onset. As a matter of fact, I don't recall the feeling of ever tripping. There was no visuals such as color changes or moving objects as with LSD or shrooms. This was purely hallucinations. Nothing was real, nothing was fake. There was no distinguishing reality from the fantasy world. I completely forgot that I'd even taken a drug. This part of the story is told through the eyes of my friends. The first experience, we all set out our separate ways, 3 of us. When they found me, they said I was in a lake with weeds matted down around me in a perfect circle and was shouting at them that I was in a Target playing PlayStation. Then I told them that I was in B's pool. B does not have a pool. I sure as hell thought he did that night. I will be damned if I was not swimming in it. Neither me or my friends recall much until I said that. I was ready to go back to Pat's, 20 to 30 miles away from the woods. They said that I demanded to let me drive and we should go back. They did not think so, so I left them. This next part of the story is my own recollection. I do not remember leaving them or driving anywhere. I start my memory recall with me standing on the edge of the woods off of a country road where a local spring was. I remember seeing my car on a dirt embankment and Lake County Sheriff's SUV behind my car. I remember having no feeling of being afraid or scared of getting arrested. I still do not remember taking any drug and do not realize that I am tripping balls. The officer approached me and asked for my ID. In the report, it stated that I reached down to the ground and handed him a pile of dirt. The reason I know this is because the lady at the dispatcher's office was the mother of one of the friends that I was tripping with. The initial belief was that I was a mentally retarded kid who stole his parents' car. I remember him searching my car, and then for some reason he says, "Don't worry, you are not in trouble. You are not being arrested. I'm just Baker acting you." I had no idea what he meant, but I was too calm and relaxed to do anything. So, I was placed in cuffs and put in the back of the cop's SUV. During the ride there, somehow another officer appeared in the front seat and they began to smoke pot. If I was sober, I would have been like, "What the hell?" But at the time, it did not seem to bother me. Luckily, I did not say anything because the second officer and the pot did not exist. We finally arrived to the hospital to take blood and find out what the hell I was on. The officer asked me to step out the vehicle. I looked down and realized that I was shackled to the vehicle. Not really. Suddenly, the image of shackles disappears right before my eyes. I realize now that I am on something and I am beginning to come down. I was escorted into the hospital and placed on a bed and they began to draw blood. Now, images of people and things began to appear and disappear. While the images that were there seemed so realistic, so real that I could touch, smell, and hear them. It seemed like they were really there. There was a complete interaction with the hallucinations. The doctors found nothing in their standard drug tests. I was now becoming sober enough to remember bits and pieces, and I recall taking the drugs. I told the doctors what I had taken. They said the only thing for me to do is to go into detox until the drug completely wears off. I remember sitting in the chair at the detox and random people would sit in the chair beside me. All of them would disappear within a minute. The only person that was actually beside me was my mother, and she kept asking me who I was talking to. So, my mother got me signed in, and they said that I would have to be in there at least 24 hours, and the doctor would evaluate me and tell me whether or not I was okay to go. The next day, I woke up completely sober and feeling refreshed. I had tripped for a solid 24 hours. The doctor evaluated me and said that I was good to go. Through all of the different drugs I have done, I usually do them more than once. This drug I did once and will never touch again.